Right now, Ukraine has created a Doomsday Missile. Explosions are ripping through Moscow. Ukrainian weaponry has astonished the entire world. Crimea has been blown up and Russia is losing the peninsula. The liberation of southern Ukraine has begun. No one expected this. Russians are already fleeing the Kherson region, burning their own weapons as they go. The discovery of the Partisan surprised everyone. A sensation! NATO is encircling Russia. Troops are already at the doorstep. These details will shock you. Trump has delivered a decisive blow. This is a complete reset. The fate of the war is sealed. People in Russia are in a panic. It's a real catastrophe there. There's no gasoline and none expected. This strike by the Ukrainian armed forces put an end to it. All this and more in our program Hotspot. Urgent. Ukraine has unveiled a monster missile that can reach Moscow. Ukrainian manufacturers have presented a new missile with a range of 1,000 kilometers. This completely breaks the mold. The Ukrainian armed forces no longer need the US. And why is this weapon a real nightmare for the Kremlin? Watch all the details right now.
Ukraine has demonstrated its long-range Neptune for the first time. On Independence Day, the official portal of Ukraine's Ministry of Defense showcased the new Ukrainian missile for the first time, the long-range Neptune with a range of up to 1,000 kilometers.
We are proud Ukrainians. We possess our independence, and we also have powerful weapons at our disposal.
The missile is based on the R-360 Neptune anti-ship cruise missile, which was used to sink the flagship of the occupiers' Black Sea fleet, the Moskva, at the time.
Moskva, the first one. 2 hole. The propeller has stopped. It's going to explode. It'll capsize. I repeat, it'll capsize.
Compared to its anti-ship counterpart, the long-range Neptune has been enlarged in size and range and is also capable of striking land targets.
The missile that was shown is longer and has a larger diameter. Well, since, let's say, the naval Neptune has a range of 280 kilometers and here it's 1,000 kilometers, they had to seriously redesign the fuselage. It's certainly worth noting that our dedicated engineers took the most straightforward and simplest approach. That is to say, they simply increased the overall geometric dimensions of the missile, thereby significantly increasing its internal fuel capacity.
At the same time, a fake story authored by the Kremlin's troll factory leaked into the media. Supposedly, the Trump administration is suspending deliveries of Patriot, HIMARS, and Hellfire missiles to Ukraine. The Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation assured that there is no suspension of aid, and most importantly, that today, Ukraine is much less dependent on American missiles.
Why is Trump's blockade of ATACMS no longer as frightening for Ukraine? Washington may have overestimated the impact of American long-range missiles, while Kyiv is strengthening its own defenses.
Ukraine's independence in conducting long-range strikes on Russian territory is a result of a significant increase in Ukrainian production.
Ukraine has developed and is mass-producing at least 2 very long-range, ultra-long-range drones. These are the Lyuty and the FP1. So the FP1 has a range of 1,600 kilometers, and as for the Lyuty drone, its initial range when the landing gear was fixed was about 1,000 kilometers. Now, with retractable landing gear and an increased fuel supply, it's 1,200 kilometers.
The scale of production allows for the daily launch of about 100 long-range drones targeting military and energy sites within Russian territory. Just in the past few days, Ukrainian drones have successfully struck the Syzran oil refinery in the Samara region.
That's it. You see it, I don't. Looks like that's all. This is the final one. That's it, that's all. He wounded it. He hit it, right? Yes.
As well as the significant Ust-Luga seaport, which is located in the Leningrad region.
Film it, film the group. You can see it flying.
And of course, we can't forget about the Ukrainian Pink Bird, the Flamingo cruise missile, whose appearance has significantly shifted the balance of power in the Russian skies.
And if we use the Flamingo, it can reach as far as Omsk. That's right. That means all significant Russian missile manufacturing facilities, more than 90% of Russia's crucial oil refineries, indeed well over 95% of all Russian oil refineries, and 90% of the key enterprises within the Russian military-industrial complex will be well within range and vulnerable to attack.
The main advantage of the Ukrainian Bird is its simple production, a strike range of up to 3,000 kilometers, and an impressive warhead, 1,150 kilograms.
A hit by a missile like the Flamingo, yes, if a drone hits, it causes damage. If a missile like that hits with explosives with a warhead of 1,150 kilograms as stated, then we're not talking about damage. We're talking about complete destruction. If it's an oil refinery, for example, there won't be any repairs or searching for spare parts, just collecting scrap metal. And if it's an industrial facility, some kind of workshop, right? So you just clear the site and build a new workshop, because repairing it, there will be a crater 20 to 25 meters wide.
The fate of Russian oil refineries, military factories, airfields, and other defense industry facilities now depends little on Washington's opinion or position.
The liberation of the Kherson region has begun. The collaborators have already started to flee. Traitors are fleeing en masse from the occupied part of the Kherson region to Crimea. They are grabbing their families and belongings, leaving everything else behind. Moreover, the occupiers have started burning their own military equipment in the Kherson region. Watch to learn about all the reasons and consequences of the latest events.
Collaborators are fleeing from the left bank of the Dnipro in the Kherson region to Crimea. They are actively packing their things and moving their families. This is being reported by the partisan movement Atesh.
Agents of Atesh report that employees of the occupation administrations and deputies from Hola Pristan, Kakhovka, Nova Kakhovka, and Hornostaivka have started leaving for Crimea. There is an active relocation of families underway.
Atesh does not specify the reason for the move, but it's not hard to guess. The occupiers are afraid. And it's not just minor traitors, but high-ranking ones as well. For example, Vladimir Saldo. A few days ago, information appeared online that the so-called governor of Kherson region called Moscow in a panic.
Saldo called and said that among local officials in the Kherson region, there are strange rumors going around. Supposedly, Vladimir Vladimirovich only needs the DPR and LPR, and Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions will be given back to Ukraine. This issue is being actively discussed there. He was told that this is nonsense and that someday we will take back Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. The special military operation, thank God, is not ending.
But it seems that even the collaborators have stopped believing the Kremlin. As a result, panic and fear that Ukraine will soon take back what is theirs.
Knowing what the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces, General Syrskyi, said, that you can't win a war by defense alone, everyone understands perfectly well that sooner or later the moment will come when they will have to answer for what they've done. They will have to answer when the defense forces go on the offensive. The undeniable fact that some Russian officials, specifically those who possess Ukrainian roots, let's say, are actively trying to move their entire families to the sovereign territory of the Russian Federation is a significant trend that, well, isn't something that has just recently started in these current days, but rather has been ongoing for some time.
The traitors and occupiers fear not only the upcoming offensive by the Ukrainian armed forces, but also death at the hands of Ukrainian underground fighters.
An important point is the partisan underground movement. We see how often our partisans, our intelligence, and the security service of Ukraine eliminate the occupiers, so-called top occupiers. And after all, for the occupier, it's only a matter of time before they are eliminated. Now they have started to realize this.
The Russian army is also starting to wake up to this reality in the Kherson region. The occupiers have even started burning their own equipment just to avoid going to the front lines. Atesh showed one of these arson incidents. Equipment from the 24th Motorized Rifle Regiment is burning. The partisans state that the situation in the regiment is critical. Among Russian soldiers, there are more and more deserters, those who leave their units without permission and run away. The reason is the same as always for the Russian army, its command. The soldiers complain about harsh and incompetent orders from the command, which have led to heavy losses for the unit, and the troops being abandoned at their positions without electronic warfare equipment, left alone to face Ukrainian drones.
Most often, as they say, these individuals typically put on their skis with weapons firmly in hand, desert their positions, and then head directly to Sochi, a well-known destination. In Russian, this is called unauthorized abandonment of one's unit. They do this to run away, to try to survive somehow. Some find a way to surrender and become prisoners of war. That's how it is. But as a general rule, such specific cases of individuals leaving or instances of desertion are quite commonly observed and frequently encountered.
It's not possible to say that Sochi is a mass phenomenon yet, but these are not isolated cases either. Russian soldiers are increasingly refusing to dance to the command's tune, for whom they are nothing more than cannon fodder. Local traitors and collaborators also understand the inevitability of the Ukrainian armed forces' arrival. But will they manage to escape in time?
Urgent. Hell in Crimea. Russia is losing the peninsula. Putin has been dealt a blow to the gut. The railway is in ruins. A gasoline collapse in Russia. People are in panic. Ukraine has destroyed at least 17% of Russia's oil refining capacity. Russia is squeezing out its last resources. Details in the next segment.
Brave Ukrainians. In blazing Pokrovsk, a man destroyed a Russian drone with his bare hands. Without any special equipment, he managed to disable the drone and even remove its munition. After that, the drone started to smoke and likely caught fire. Meanwhile, Putin's occupiers continue to cynically attack the civilian population. Just within a week, Russian forces launched nearly 2,000 drones at the Kherson region. There is high enemy drone activity along the Kherson-Mykolaiv highway. Residents have been urged not to travel along this route.
This is an element of military political pressure on the leadership of Ukraine. The Russian Federation, realizing the futility of conducting a large-scale landing operation to capture Kherson and the territory of the Kherson region controlled by the armed forces of Ukraine, has resorted to a tactic of terror against the civilian population. In this way, the Russian Federation wants to demonstrate during negotiations with the United States and Ukraine that it claims the entire territory of the Kherson region.
But the drones also paid a visit to the Russians. On the morning of August 26th, explosions thundered in temporarily occupied Crimea. The Urzainaya railway station in the village of Krasnogvardeyskoye may have been hit. And the most important sector of Putin's economy, the oil refineries, remains a primary target for UAVs. Overall, Ukraine has knocked out at least 17% of Russian oil refining capacity, according to Reuters. Some regions of the country are experiencing a gasoline shortage.
The Russian Federation, a country of gas stations, has made an unprecedented decision to ban the export of gasoline and diesel fuel. Notably, according to various Russian sources, the wholesale price of A95 gasoline has significantly increased by a substantial 50% since the very beginning of the current year, causing considerable economic impact. It should be particularly noted that as a direct and significant result of either partial or complete shutdowns of numerous oil refineries within the Russian Federation, this unfortunate situation has had a truly serious and detrimental impact on the overall budget of the occupying country. According to Russian economists, the budget deficit stands at $60 billion. This is approximately 2.2% of GDP.
But still, in Moscow, instead of thinking about protecting the refineries, they are looking for scapegoats. The Kremlin has found someone to blame for the fact that the Ukrainian armed forces broke through into the Kursk region. In Russia, a number of officials from the leadership of 3 regions bordering Ukraine have been detained. They are being accused of all possible wrongdoings.
This is a favorite Russian tactic, especially of the Russian law enforcement system, to find a scapegoat. Thus, the political leadership of the Russian Federation is essentially shifting all responsibility for the failures in organizing the defense of the border regions onto the direct leadership of those regions. It should be noted that the leadership of the Kursk region is being accused of embezzling funds allocated for the construction of so-called Zasechnia lines, that is, defense lines, amounting to approximately 1 billion rubles.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration has approved the sale to Ukraine of more than 3,000 air-launched Iran missiles with a range of 250 to 450 kilometers. As of August 2025, 16 countries participating in the Czech initiative to supply ammunition have already delivered more than 1 million shells to Ukraine. The goal is to deliver about 800,000 more.
We can say that the Czech initiative has enabled Ukraine's defense forces to significantly reduce the firepower ratio, which had previously favored the Russian occupiers. If at the very beginning of the full-scale Russian invasion, the overwhelming firepower ratio was a staggering 1 to 15, now, in the current situation, it has shifted to a more balanced, yet still significant, 1 to 2 in favor of the Russian Federation's military forces. As we can see, both the Czech initiative and the initiative of EU countries have played a key role in the timely supply of artillery shells for the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine.
It has already been announced that the 30th meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, Ramstein, will take place on September 9th in London. However, the agenda has not yet been disclosed.
First and foremost, this is a political signal to the Russian Federation. The West has not grown tired of Ukraine, and accordingly, Western countries remain ready to continue providing both military, technical, and financial assistance to Ukraine as it resists Russian aggression. Secondly, there is military technical cooperation. After each Ramstein meeting, concrete decisions are made regarding the provision of military technical assistance, taking into account the realities and the situation on the front line.
The Ramstein format was created in March 2022 by the United States as a platform for coordinating military aid to Ukraine, with the participation of more than 50 countries.
Breaking news. Trump goes on the offensive. A visit to China. This meeting with President Xi could decide the fate of the war. Shock. The elimination of the Pentagon. Trump made an unexpected announcement. Something incredible awaits the USA. This changes everything. And a secret conspiracy. Trump will meet with Putin's friends. Details in the report.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
US President Trump made new extraordinary statements. For example, he claimed that ending the war in Ukraine is actually hindered by a large-scale interpersonal conflict.
I thought achieving peace in this case would be the easiest thing, but it turned out to be a serious interpersonal conflict. But we will stop it in the end. Putin doesn't want to meet with Zelensky because he doesn't like him. In reality, they don't like each other. There are people I don't like, and I also don't want to meet with them.
And the problem for the whole world and America's allies is that Trump's position is often quite childish, and he views some fundamentally important things, such as Russia's aggression against Ukraine, through rose-colored glasses and with a rather naive perspective. The very approach needs to be changed. We need to stop trying to persuade Putin, stop looking for ways to approach him, and instead act decisively and with focus.
Also, according to Trump's statements, during negotiations with Putin, he once again discussed the issue of nuclear disarmament.
We talked about reducing nuclear weapons, and we will also involve China in this. We have the largest nuclear arsenal. Russia is in second place, and China is third, and they're far behind. But they'll catch up to us in 5 years. We would like denuclearization. It's too much power.
The American president also announced a visit to China and a meeting with President Xi Jinping to continue negotiations on a new trade agreement.
I would like to meet with him this year. Chairman Xi would like me to come to China. These are very important relations. As you know, we get a lot of money from China because of tariffs and other things.
Very often, Trump presents wishful thinking as reality, and a lot of experts and diplomats are visibly taken aback when they hear such statements. And military or effective economic solutions, they exist somewhere in Trump's mind, but they are rarely examples or concrete cases in real politics and economics. And obviously, this also affects how Trump is perceived by Xi, Putin, and other authoritarian leaders.
And Trump also stated that he gets along very well with Kim Jong-un and wants to have another meeting with the North Korean dictator.
I have a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un from North Korea, and many will say that's terrible. But no, it's all good. In fact, someday I'll see him, and I'm looking forward to meeting him. He was very kind to me. We had 2 meetings, and we got along great. I know him better than you do. I shouldn't say that I like him, because if I do, I'll get killed in the fake news.
And finally, Trump announced his intention to rename the U.S. Department of Defense to the Department of War. He hasn't specified yet who they're planning to go to war with.
You know, we call it the Department of Defense, but between us, I think we're going to change the name. I don't want it to be just about defense. We want defense, but we also want offense, if you don't mind. So it's up to you to decide. But, you know, as the War Department, we want everything, and I think it's time for us to get back to that.
Ukrainian President Zelensky held a meeting with U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg. They discussed security guarantees for Ukraine and also announced a meeting between Ukrainian and American teams to discuss possible peace negotiations with Russia.
There are very active consultations among our allies, and they are ongoing, so some. But as of now, no consensus or decision that could truly be effective has been reached yet.
The Polish authorities have denied reports about the risk of Starlink being cut off for Ukraine. Such concerns arose after Polish President Nawrocki vetoed social benefits for unemployed Ukrainian refugees.
Such a destructive stance from the new Polish president negatively affects Poland's standing on the international stage, portraying them not as an ally of the entire civilized world, but quite the opposite. Well, let's say as a kind of internal opposition that thankfully hasn't yet reached the level of Orban or Schlitz, but is moving rapidly in that direction.
The media has reported that on September 9th, the 30th meeting in the Ramstein format will take place in London. What will be discussed and whether the United States will participate is still unknown.
It is clear that initiatives such as purchasing American weapons with European money are one of the tools that most actively draw Trump in. After yet another truly unsuccessful attempt by former President Trump to end the protracted war at virtually any cost, there is now a high probability that the entire ongoing process of the collective West supporting Ukraine could move in a more constructive direction.
Apparently, the peace in Ukraine that Trump promised would come in just a few days is once again being postponed indefinitely, shrouded in the fog of dozens of new meetings and new agreements with questionable results. Unbelievable! Ukraine has created an army of killer drones. This will change everything. Ukrainian drone manufacturers have achieved the impossible. Our strike drone production capacity has caught up with the Russian Shahed assembly plant. These drones of the Ukrainian armed forces will make life hell for the Russians. What does this mean for the front lines? All the details are in the report.
catch up and surpass. Ukraine has reached a production rate of its own strike drones comparable to that of Russia. First and foremost, we're talking about the latest long-range UAV, the FP1. According to the Associated Press, Ukraine has managed to scale up its production capacity and is now assembling about 100 drones per day. At the same time, the drone is significantly cheaper than the Shahed. One FP1 costs $55,000.
The overall technical specifications are not very different from those of the Shahed. Of course, it has a different design, but its function is the same. Even though it can fly a bit farther, it has a slightly higher payload capacity and is somewhat more advanced in terms of hitting a specific target accurately. There has never been a case where the FP1 accidentally hits civilian targets. That's why it's very convenient for planning missions, making them safe and highly accurate. And it's also 5 times cheaper than the Shahed, which is very beneficial for our country, which isn't that wealthy.
The secret is simple, experts explain. Ukraine does not have uninterrupted supplies of engines from Iran and China. We don't have the same production capacity as Russia, nor do we have as much money. Accordingly, our engineers simplified everything as much as possible, with only one condition: the drone absolutely must reach and hit its intended target. The main structural material of the FP1 drone is plywood. These components are milled on a laser machine. This is a very cheap and mass-produced solution. The skin is then attached to this frame using joints and fasteners. For a kamikaze drone that is meant to make only one flight in its lifetime, which should end with it simply crashing into the target and exploding, this is not just sufficient, it's the right approach. At the same time, despite its outward simplicity, the FP1's internal components are quite advanced. The drone is equipped with a whole array of sensors and modules that help it pass through enemy electronic warfare zones, identify its target, and approach it along the most effective trajectory.
Ukraine has overcome a number of challenges which made it possible to create unmanned systems that meet the requirements of modern missiles. They are accurate in terms of hitting their targets, can bypass electronic warfare systems, and are capable of operating even without satellite navigation systems. So here, in fact, we're talking about the technological advancements we've achieved and the solutions we've developed that allow us to operate deep within Russian Federation territory.
By deep, we mean a range of about 1,600 kilometers. At the same time, the FP1 carries a rather powerful warhead over this distance, about 60 kilograms. There is also the possibility of increasing the amount of explosives to 120 kilograms by partially reducing the range. This latest drone can easily reach the Russian capital within its strike zone. It can circle it twice. Moreover, a range of 1,600 kilometers makes such remote regions of Russia as Udmurtia, Tatarstan, Perm accessible to Ukrainian defense forces.
Samara region, Yekaterinburg region, Vologda, Kostroma, Perm Krai, Bashkortostan, Yekaterinburg, even Murmansk region. You don't have enough fingers on your hands to count them all. So we understand that Putin's attempt to move his drone or missile factories further from the border hasn't saved him.
At the same time, as noted in the Financial Times article, the FPV-1 is far from the only Ukrainian strike drone hitting targets in Russia every night. Combined with the production of other UAVs, the total number is quite impressive.
Urgent! NATO has moved troops to Russia's borders. War is at the doorstep. The alliance is conducting large-scale exercises in close proximity to Russia's borders, in Finland. The Kremlin is in a panic. What specific combat scenarios are being practiced? And why are the exercises taking place right next to Russia's borders? Find out what this means for Putin and his army right now.
The international military exercise Southern Griffin 25 has begun in Finland. The maneuvers involve 1,600 military personnel from Europe and the United States. Since the beginning of August, Finland's Ministry of Defense has stated that starting from the second half of 2025, US troops are actively participating in exercises on Finnish territory and in the Baltic Sea, strengthening their military presence there. Little-known Russian sources are reporting on the alliance forces' exercises right at Russia's borders. Top Russian propagandists, as well as the official Kremlin, remain silent.
In recent years, Moscow has observed unprecedented NATO activity near Russia's western borders. The alliance, expanding its operations, justifies this by the need to deter aggression. The Russian side has repeatedly expressed concern over the buildup of the bloc's military presence in Europe. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has emphasized its readiness for dialogue with NATO on an equal footing, provided that the West abandons the militarization of the continent.
The Southern Griffin 25 exercises involve NH-90 transport helicopters and MG-500 light helicopters, which belong to the UTI regiment, as well as F-16 Hornet fighter jets in service with the Finnish military and armed forces. In addition, aircraft from the armed forces of various European countries and the United States will participate in the maneuvers. After Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Finland, in order to ensure its own security, joined NATO almost immediately. Now, exercises are held here on a regular basis.
The Russian Federation periodically raises the issue of a possible armed confrontation scenario with NATO and the new countries that have joined the alliance. Specifically, this refers to Sweden and Finland. Let's at least recall those events when the so-called map of possible territorial claims by the Russian Federation against a number of Baltic countries appeared. Moreover, it was about the possible Russian control over the Swedish island of Gotland.
These exercises are part of the implementation of the agreement on defense cooperation between Helsinki and Washington, under which the American side will gain access to 15 Finnish military facilities. In a recent interview, Finnish President Alexander Stubb stated that the militarization and preparation of Finland for a possible invasion will continue as long as the war in Ukraine persists.
As I have always emphasized, we can't do anything about our geography. We have a history with Russia, and we will have a future with Russia. But today, of course, relations are very complicated. In fact, there are no relations because of the war, but someday when the war is over, new relations will certainly be built. Finland will establish relations with Russia only after the war with Ukraine ends. Putin has united Europe, expanded NATO by bringing in Finland and Sweden, and has effectively increased NATO's defense spending from 2 to 5%.
The Russian Federation has repeatedly voiced its territorial claims and its intention to protect Russian-speaking populations in the Baltic countries and beyond. That is why Finland and other countries bordering the Kremlin are acting proactively. For now, Russia's main military resources are concentrated on the war in Ukraine.
Various dates are being mentioned. These include, of course, 2026 and later dates. So, accordingly, NATO countries, specifically the closest neighbors, the countries bordering the Russian Federation or nearby neighbors, are trying to replenish their arsenals with the types of weapons that will allow them to actively counter possible Russian aggression.
Recently, the United States deployed 3 formidable B-1B strategic bombers to Norway for extensive NATO exercises, specifically to practice enhanced cooperation with key allies, thoroughly test their combat readiness, and effectively carry out a number of crucial joint missions. The Southern Griffin 25 exercises on the border with Russia will continue until September 12th.
That's all. And for more breaking news from the front, tune in to our next episode.